Great, thank you. Welcome. We have members of the business and public sector community here, the employer community. We are gathered to talk to you a little bit about a very important issue, one that Speaker Madigan has risen to a level of having the committee as a whole meet. Workers' compensation is something that we're happy that the Speaker is bringing to the forefront. We also greatly appreciate Bruce Rauner, Governor Rauner's efforts in his turnaround program to make workers' compensation one of his highest priorities in trying to improve our state's business climate, as well as helping those from the public sector. This is a complicated issue, and we believe that the General Assembly needs to address it. We believe it also necessitates more than one hearing. We're glad we're doing the hearing today, but to hear from all stakeholders, we think that there should be a second hearing. If you look at both public and private employers, you see that we're pushing for workers' comp reform, and a lot of it has to do with our state's lack of competitiveness. And for the public sector, the alarming rate that costs for workers' compensation are hitting our public entities, both local government as well as the state of Illinois. We really want, from the perspective of what we're trying to accomplish with reform, is getting us back to the middle of the pack in terms of competitiveness where we were 10 years ago. In 2005, we were ranked 23rd by the Oregon Department of Commerce and Economic Development. Today, we're ranked 7th. Our competing states around us are much less costly in terms of workers' compensation costs, and we want to get us back to the middle. We have the 7th, as I mentioned, the 7th highest workers' comp costs. We also believe that today's hearing, you may hear some issues around the loss of benefits for injured workers. We can tell you that in 2011, the package that was passed, there were no reductions for benefits for legitimately injured workers. None of the proposals that the governor, the business community, the employer community are offering are reductions in benefits for injured workers. We want to make sure that legitimately injured workers are compensated appropriately. Illinois has a high benefit cost state. We are very generous with our benefits, and we're not saying that we should take those away at all. In fact, if you look at the pro-Republic report that was announced in March of this year, we had an analysis of 2002 to 2014, and it showed that while they were trying to show that Illinois, or I should say around the country, that workers' compensation systems were trying to race to the bottom, that study showed that out of the 12 years that they had actually analyzed, Illinois had not a single year that we had a benefit increase. In fact, 9 of those years we had benefit increases. We were second in 7 of those years to only Nevada in terms of the magnitude of our benefit increases. So we've not had benefit increases or benefit decreases in the state of Illinois. In the 3 years that we also did not have benefit increases, we had leveling, no benefit increases, no benefit increases, and in 2011 to 2013, there were no changes in benefits based on that report. And then finally, we do believe that from the governor's perspective as well as ours, that the real solution to workers' compensation reform is addressing whether or not the injury actually occurred in the workplace. We have to do something about our causation standard. The 29 states across the country have seemed to figure it out how causation is something that making sure that the workplace is the cause of the injury before it becomes a compensable workers' comp injury. So we have a fine group of people here to speak in addition to myself, and I'll turn it over to our next speaker, which is Rob Carr from the Retail Merchants Association.
Good morning, Rob Carr. It's my honor to represent the Illinois retailers of the state of Illinois. Workers' comp costs discourage investment in Illinois, and for the retail industry, we operate on extraordinarily thin profit margins, so every cost function matters. And when it comes to a limited pot of money that you have to invest, and you have a choice of investing it here or elsewhere, you're going to invest that where you have the greatest chance of maximizing your return on investment. And unfortunately, within the current workers' comp system, it constantly comes up as a significant deterrent to investing within the state of Illinois, whether that issue be fraud or other things that are driving it. The bottom line is that as we continue to rank, as Jay noted, 7th in the nation, it discourages that investment here, which impacts our consumers, local governments, schools, everyone else who benefits from additional investment and the revenues that accrue from that investment. So we also welcome the greater discussion by the House and the Assembly. We hope in the weeks to come that they will address the issue. I think it's fair to say that just a return to being average will be a significant step forward for the state.
Good morning. My name is Kim Meisch, and I'm the State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business. We represent about 11,000 small employers across the state. And as I talk to my members, by far the number one concern is the rising costs and continued high costs of workers' compensation in our state. And the interesting thing is that these aren't just small employers in Republican districts. They're small employers in Democrat districts. And so today we're pleased that the Speaker is holding a committee of the whole. Unfortunately, it's a little bit one-sided. We hope that there will be a second hearing so that certainly we can have an opportunity and have our members have an opportunity to also express to members of the General Assembly and the Illinois House our concerns about the rising cost of workers' compensation. We are thrilled that we have a governor who has made changing the causation standard a top priority. We don't believe that the 2011 reforms went far enough, and certainly in speaking with our members, they agree that they haven't seen any reduction in costs. And so it's time for us to have serious reform and look at changing our causation standard so that Saturday afternoon softball injuries don't turn into Monday morning workers' compensation injuries and claims. And that's really what's going on. It's the heart of what NFIB is concerned about. We are not interested at all in taking away benefits of legitimately injured workers who are injured on the job. That is, we're not interested at all in doing that. But what we do want is to reduce fraud and to really reduce costs by making sure that people who aren't injured on the job don't get workers' compensation benefits. Thank you.
I'm Brad Cole, Executive Director of the Illinois Municipal League, and when we often talk about workers' compensation reform, we think about private industry and businesses in our communities, but there is also a cost impact on local governments and the public sector because the high costs that are associated with workers' compensation when they impact local governments are directly put on the backs of taxpayers. Local governments and public bodies only have one place to go, and that's to the taxpayer, either through increased taxes or fees for service to recoup their money. And over the last several years, we supported the changes in 2011, but at that time, we didn't think it went far enough. And over the last several years, Illinois municipalities have continued to express their concern about high workers' compensation costs. In fact, our current legislative agenda includes the pursuit of these reforms and additional reforms like you'll hear about and have already heard about today. But we need to see the savings for local governments so that we can reduce the cost pressures that are then put on the backs of taxpayers, but also to support the industrial and economic growth of our communities, to grow the economy through jobs, to help the communities to gain new resources through either the jobs or the sales that are created as a part of those. We've been working with the governor, and we want to continue to work with the General Assembly on these issues and to remind folks that it's not just the private sector, but also the public sector that sees a serious and significant need for workers' compensation reform. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alicia Martin, and I'm president of Associated Builders and Contractors Illinois chapter. Illinois employers, both public and private, want to return Illinois to its previous 2005 ranked terms of workers' compensation premiums. Our current workers' compensation insurance system serves like a hidden additional tax on the cost of doing business for Illinois contractors. Construction has lagged much of the rest of the economy in recovering from the Great Recession, and meaningful reform that lower rates will help lower the cost of doing business in Illinois. That means more money for business owners to invest and expand their businesses and create more jobs. The bottom line is that workers' compensation reform will not impact legitimately injured workers. Reform will simply put us on a more even playing field with our neighboring states when it comes to the business climate in Illinois.
I'm Greg Bays, president of the Illinois Manufacturers Association. You're going to hear a lot of discussion about this issue you've heard today and all the legitimate points that have been made. Illinois has a high cost for workers' compensation. We have example after example, especially of my membership, that move and leave this state because of the high workers' comp costs. In fact, you may all remember just a couple of weeks ago, a shelving manufacturer in Illinois is going to move its operations across to the Indiana border. Most of their employees won't have to move, but the company will save significant amounts of money by doing that. Why do they save money? What's the cost? This is a $3 billion system. Nearly half of it goes to medical costs, those costs that are charged to be able to put a worker back to work or compensate them for the loss of a body part. And that's what compensation workers' comp is about. And why it's more expensive here are various reasons. We addressed some of those in the 2011 legislation. We reduced the medical fee schedule by 30%. We're still the third highest in the nation. We did not talk about the indemnity costs whatsoever, the cost of the loss of a finger, the loss of a body part, a permanent partial rehabilitation. But just to cite why the costs are higher here, listen to these numbers. Unfortunately, a worker loses an arm. In Illinois, that will cost, by the time it is litigated and goes through the system, $439,000. In Ohio, the loss of that same arm will be $193,000. The national average, $169,000. Unfortunately, that's what compensation workers' comp is about. The cost on the indemnity side, but also on the medical side of what medical providers are able to charge. They charge a much higher rate on a workers' compensation case. And so chiropractors are unlimited, for example, in the number of visits that somebody can make for a back injury. Physical therapy, unlimited. Where if it's over on the private side, there are limitations that are there. What we ask for is to try to bring those medical costs back into line. What we also want to look at is the frictional costs that occur in the workers' compensation system. It takes a long time to litigate a case through the entire process. Sometimes cases may take 8 or 9 years. And who suffers? The business owner doesn't get the person back to work. The injured worker doesn't receive the compensation that they're there. So you're going to hear a lot about the fact that insurance companies from the 2011 aren't passing along the savings, except remember the fact that there's a lot of self-insured insurers in this state that don't go through an insurance company, that haven't realized the savings. And much of that is because of the other frictional costs that are there. So as you listen to this discussion today and the next few weeks, causation is an important case, very at the top priority to make sure that legitimate injuries that are caused in the workplace are ones that are compensated. We take care of fraud as an issue, something that our state's attorneys or Attorney General, the Attorney General addressed this issue just a couple of years ago, I think it was, about that fraud is a problem and something that should be looked at, but a state's attorney has lots of priorities in their office. Workers' comp fraud is never one of the high reasons to go after in that area. And we think that the medical fee schedule in the state needs to be addressed. Governor Rauner has talked about another 30% reduction. We strongly support that. So you'll hear a lot of issues today, a lot of things about the injured worker, and we agree that they should be compensated, but they should be compensated properly and honestly. Also, the medical community, the high cost of that particular side of it should be addressed in this legislation as well. So we applaud Governor Rauner's efforts. I stand here with my compatriots in the business community and the public sector. This is a top priority of competitiveness in the state of Illinois.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike Reaver, Vice President, Government Relations for the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. First, want to applaud the bipartisan efforts of 2011. They were a great down payment, but there's still a lot of work to do with workers' compensation. Businesses have an incentive. I think it's important to understand, as some have alluded to, businesses have an incentive to ensure employees get back to work and get their medical treatment quickly. But we want to ensure that the system is fair to both sides. When we talk to employers, businesses in the Chicagoland region, as Kim mentioned, this is not a partisan issue. It should be and it continues to be a bipartisan issue, especially in the Chicagoland region, where overwhelmingly we have a lot of Democratic legislators, obviously. But when we hear from businesses, this is an important issue to them. It prevents them from investing money into their business, expanding jobs, bringing in new services and products that they otherwise would invest in if they didn't have to pay some of the higher costs related to Illinois' workers' compensation law. And what we're looking at is requiring the workplace to be the principal cause of the injury. We don't think it's unreasonable that, if you get injured at the workplace, that the majority of that injury or the principal cause of that injury happens there. Right now, it's unreasonable that 1% of that injury could happen at the workplace, 99% of it could happen outside, and that the employer has to pay those costs. Again, money that would otherwise go to expanding the business, hiring new employees. So we applaud the governor, we applaud the speaker for their leadership on this issue, and look forward to working with them. Thank you.
Will Kiles with the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce. We too applaud the governor and the speaker for looking into these issues over the next couple of days and several weeks, months. The reason for the business community to push on workers' compensation reform is our lack of competitiveness. We only seek to get back to the middle of the pack when it comes to workers' compensation costs. It directly affects Illinois' ability to attract jobs. In fact, over a 10-year period, Illinois has lost over 156,000 manufacturing jobs. We're last in job growth amongst our neighboring states, and CEM ranked Illinois 48th among the top states for business. So we want to get back into business competition and making Illinois the great state that it is.
Okay, ready to take some questions?
I'll start with a tough one. What's your name?
Yeah, thank you. Jay Shattuck. I forgot to mention that. I do work with the Illinois Chamber and other business groups as a contract lobbyist.
Well, the thread here is we want to preserve the benefits for people who are legitimately injured.
Yes.
How are you going to do that? Or how should
We're not going to change any laws that decrease benefits.
And you cut away, I mean, how are you going to create something that is good for the right reasons and takes away the bad part?
Well, one of the things that we've talked about is the fact that we want to make sure that the workplace is the cause of the injury. What we have, as I think Mike has pretty well laid out, is that when you have today 1% of the cause being in the workplace, then we're responsible to pay for 100% of the medical and 100% of the disability, whereas 99% of the injury was caused outside of the workplace. But today's law says that we have to pay for that entirely.
Jay, you just said you don't want to change the law relative to the benefits.
Right.
But your point 6 says you want to reduce the carpal tunnel syndrome payments from an average of 40 weeks to a maximum of 28. Wouldn't that be a reduction in benefits?
Where did we say that?
You're looking at 2011.
Yeah, that was a 2011 reduction.
Oh, I thought
And quite frankly, we had 3 or 4 changes in the benefit levels in 2011, but those were to address abuses that even the other side could not defend. Things like the I'm sorry, Menard Prison situation, where there was just a whole plethora of carpal tunnel injuries for guards that were simply turning the key, and many times they weren't even turning the key in the prison.
How does causation work in other states?
We've got 29 other states that have a higher standard. About a dozen of them have a primary cause standard, which means that there has to be, on the basis of the cause in the workplace, that there has to be at least 50% or more equivalent to the workplace cause for it to be a workers' comp injury. If it's less than a 50%, then the individual still has a right to go in court and sue the employer for negligence.
Now, some injuries are going to be obvious.
Right, yeah.
You
Many of them
a
are.
hand caught in a machine or something, but how does one determine things like carpal tunnel to say if it was caused by typing on your keyboard at work or typing on Facebook at home?
It'll take medical evidence. It'll take investigation. It'll take the process. We'll have to work that through in the commission, and that's how it's done in other states as well.
You get a sense that this group feels it's being left out?
Not entirely. We have one folks that's going to be Greg's going to be testifying on behalf of the IMA, but we just think that out of I think a dozen or so witnesses, we should have more business groups and more individual employers stepping up to the table to also talk about our concerns.
So if I have a bad back and I have, I kind of have like constant pain every day from my back, and I'm at work and I slip and fall on the ice and wrench my back trying to protect all this camera equipment, is my employer responsible for
today? Yes,
that pain?
yes, today. And if you can show that through your employment, be it through your occupation and/or through your specific employer, that the cause of your back problem was due to you carrying the camera, then I think you could make a case that the workplace is primary cause of the injury. But if you're engaged in other activities outside of the workplace, is it fair for the employer to have to pick up your costs when it's not the workplace injury?
Jay, are you, you were saying medical costs are more expensive, or Greg was making the point that medical costs for the same injury are more expensive in Illinois. Are any of you alleging that basically the hospital or healthcare system in Illinois is cost shifting and making up for what they can't be making on maybe some of the areas of medicine where they're losing money, and basically dinging the employers of Illinois by having these higher healthcare costs?
You want to try that?
Yes. I think it's a fact. I mean that doctors will ask the question as you come in, is this a workplace injury? When you look that there are limitations because of the contractual arrangements that hospitals and other medical providers have with insurers, that the cost for the same activity is going to be this. A comp cost, it'll be here. Those numbers that I said about the indemnity side as well, part of that is built into there is the medical costs that'll be in that particular injury. It needs to be addressed and brought into more of a fair balance. You will hear from the Hospital Association, you will hear from the Medical Society, you will hear from the occupational side of the medical house. We have more paperwork. It takes more time. We have to do all these different things to be able to do it. But they're able to charge those high rates. So yes, indeed, that is a problem that other states don't have. We're not asking for anything that's not being done elsewhere around the country. Illinois just has allowed this system to be fettered year after year after year of these costs. And Governor Rauner is right. If we don't get this, then we're not going to be able to attract, on the manufacturing side, huge deal. Retail side, decisions on whether they're going to build 15 stores or 12 stores in a state. In the smaller business side, being able to just stay in business and the fact that their comp premium makes it impossible to do it. And also talk about the whole business of carpal tunnel and things of that nature. And so understand what that's all about in the fact that if you have a carpal tunnel operation, you are rehabilitated there and you have lost the range of motion, that I can do this with my hand. But after that, operation, you can only do partial. That's when the commission decides that your payment may well be $20,000 per hand in the state. Indiana, $8,000. So that's why the costs continue to be higher.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting. Actually, all this is interesting. You said Governor Rauner is right. The workers' comp issue is one that's real costly. It would seem to me that this is more central to getting Illinois back on track than the right-to-work stuff that we've heard about a little bit.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Could you?
No, I said. No, the right-to-work issue is somewhat of a separate issue in being able as a competitive issue. Governor Rauner has suggested that we have the empowerment zones that we try. When one looks at Illinois' competitiveness of being able to attract business to this state under our current Labor Act, we haven't been really good at it. So why not give this a try? Why not see if this will work? See if it can help depressed areas in the state that want to do it. And if other states or other portions, counties, municipalities don't want to, that's fine as well. But at least it'll give us an opportunity to see if this will be helpful. I can tell you, the manufacturers, in looking at states that are not right to work, take us right off the list because we don't have that opportunity.
Well, with the reforms you're talking about, how long do you think it would take to reap the benefits versus the right-to-work reforms that the governor's talking about?
I think this is it's like the budget issue. It's not going to be all solved this year. This issue won't all be solved in this General Assembly. But it is a start and a recognition, and we have the debate going on that these kind of changes will make a difference, and we agree with Governor Rauner's efforts.
Yeah, and on the causation, are you wanting 50 to go down to, or to go to 50% like those 12 states, or if not, what level do you negotiate for?
Yeah, I think we're supporting a primary cause of 50% or more to be the workplace. To answer your question, Missouri in 2005 did a primary cause change. Their costs were about the same as Illinois in 2005. Their costs dramatically came down after their reforms, and there's a huge gap between Missouri and Illinois right now in terms of competitiveness on workers' comp. So we think that Missouri made the right decision in 2005, and we would hope that we can get it enacted here in Illinois as well.
So is the disconnect between 2011's law to now, the fact that causation didn't change, is that really why we didn't see any savings?
Well, I would not say we have not seen any savings. What I would say is we've seen modest savings. We've talked with self-insured, individual self-insureds. I just had an email from a county organization that is a risk management firm for the various counties across the state. They've said they've, since 2011, have realized about a 10% savings. So we're not saying we're not seeing any savings, but it's not enough to move the needle so that we can compete with surrounding states and states in the country. Okay. Great. Thank you.
I don't know who's handling that.
Yeah, I think I did. Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks for being. We need to, this is one issue where we can do a lot of good things together. All right. Yeah, here's mine too. Yep. Yep.